So those of you who were participating in our first seminar, particularly when we went over the law of application, will definitely find this a little easier. Again, I'm sorry, I still have a cold, so my voice is a little funny. Those of you who participated in the law of application will find this easier to follow because they're very connected. So when we talked about teaching and speaking so that people could apply it, we mentioned that we want people to apply things according to what they need in their life. So in order for you to use what I'm teaching, it has to relate to something that you need. I mean, that sounds like a very obvious, common sense statement, but it's very, very rarely done. So we thought about how rarely people teach with the explicit instructions of how we can apply that teaching. And even more rarely do people get inside our lives enough to know what we want to apply and how we would want to apply it. All right, I'd like to sort of think for a minute. Now, this is going to be a workshop. It's going to be a very participatory seminar. So I'd like you to think about the one word you would use to describe school or most of the classes you've attended in your life. But of course, now you're all muted. So what is that word? And no matter how many times I've taught this, to how big of an audience or what kind of an audience, we always come up with the same word. Boring. So most of us found school and most classes boring. So suppose you want to catch a butterfly. How would you catch a butterfly? What is the best way to catch a butterfly? You could run after the butterfly with a net. That's a little hard. You ever try to... I had a gecko in my house the other day. It came in through a little gap in the screen. And I finally got it out of the house, but catching it was very hard because as soon as you go to catch a little insect like that, it thinks that you're a potential enemy, and it flies away or it runs away. How are you going to catch that butterfly? So butterflies are attracted to nectar. So if you put out some nectar, then the butterfly will voluntarily come, and then you can much more easily capture it than if you're just running after it. All right, this is how our listeners or our students should feel when we're teaching. They should first become curious. What is this? Now, in our second seminar, we discussed that with the principle of being unexpected. What is this? What is this all about anyway? There should be some curiosity. Then, tell me more. Then they should think, yeah, I want this. I don't just want this. I need this. And then by the end of the presentation, people should feel, I got what I needed. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go today through a very simple system as to how to be this kind of an effective speaker every time you present something. So people will be curious, initial curiosity, sustained interest, which we talked about again in seminar 2, that they want what you're teaching, that they need what you're teaching, and that you gave them something that actually fulfills their needs, that it helps them solve the real problems or questions in their life. All right, we're going to go through 4 M's: a model, maxims, method, and maximizers. A model, maxims, a method, and maximizers. So this is our basic model, and actually there's no difference in one sense between this screen and this screen. The difference is that this is how your participants feel, and this is what you're doing. So the people who are listening to you are thinking, what is this? And what are you doing? You're seizing their attention. When they're thinking, tell me more, you're stirring their curiosity. When they're thinking, I want this, you're stimulating a felt need. When they're thinking, I need this, you're surfacing a real need. And when they're thinking, I got what I wanted, you're satisfying their real need. So this is the model in the sense that this is the progression in time as what happens during your class. You remember last time with the application model, we talked about a progression of passage, principle, personalize, persuade, and perform. So this seizing attention happens very close to the beginning. You want to do this, if possible, even before presenting the passage from Scripture, or as close to the beginning as you can. This stirring curiosity is what should be happening during the whole presentation, which we talked about in number 2, unexpected, in our second level seminar. That you should be constantly creating a mystery that you're solving, not giving everyone all the information up front. Now, this stimulating felt need and surfacing real need, that's what's going to be happening during your personalized. That's what's going to be happening during your personalized. And satisfying real need is what's going to be happening during your persuade. So seizing attention and stirring curiosity is going to be happening particularly in your passage and in your principle. Although stirring curiosity should be happening throughout. Stimulating felt need and surfacing real need is how you personalize. Although you may sometimes stimulate your felt need right in the beginning, to some extent. And satisfying real need is happening when you persuade, when you're giving people a way to apply what you're teaching. All right, now we're going to look at the maxims. By maxims, we mean the underlying principles of what we're teaching today. Why is this true? Because very often people think, all right, well, teaching just means I just come and I give you information. Whether or not it has anything to do with you, that's your problem. You've got to connect the information to your life. And even those who are working for application, according to our other model of passage, principle, personalize, persuade, perform, when they're personalizing it and persuading, they may be personalizing and persuading it according to their life, not according to the lives of their listeners. In fact, we had that come up when we were trying to think of ways to personalize. I found that most of our participants were personalizing it for themselves. They were saying, all right, well, this is my experience, this is my experience. And it took quite a while of working with everybody before people would say, oh, okay, personalizing it means for my listeners' experiences, not for my experiences. Well, in order to do that, I've got to know something about my listeners' experiences. I mean, if I'm just off in a cave in the Himalayas, how am I going to do that? So our first maxim is that doing that, connecting what I'm saying to the actual experiences and questions and needs and problems and joys of my listeners is my responsibility. That underlies this whole lesson. I mean, if it's not my responsibility, why should I care to do it? Now, I want to say straight up that this is not an absolute truth. An absolute truth is that the person ultimately responsible for learning and applying and relating is the listener. You know, if I'm the listener, if I'm the hearer, then the onus is on me to listen with rapt attention. The onus is on me to think of how I can apply. The onus on me is to think about how it connects with my real life. But if a teacher or a preacher or a presenter think that the onus is on the listeners, then their presentation makes it very difficult for the listeners to do that. So from the point of view of the presenter, it's very helpful. It's not absolutely true, but it's very helpful to consider that whether or not what I'm saying connects to the actual lives of my listeners is my responsibility. I have to make this real for people. If I don't make it real for people, most people are not going to make it real for themselves. They may say, oh, okay, yeah, there were some interesting points in that class. And then they're going to go on with their lives as before. All right, the next principle that we're going to be looking at, our next maxim, is that meeting the needs of our listener is our primary service, our primary calling. You know, it's a question of, am I teaching Shastra or am I teaching people? Okay, I'm going to come here to teach you something true. No, I'm coming here to teach you. I want to transform you. I want to affect you. I want to help you. It's personal. And frankly, most teachers are thinking about their own needs. I just can't count how many classes I've attended to, whether in a mundane institution like a school, university, or being given by devotees to devotees, where the speaker is absorbed in their own life and their own needs. They speak about what's interesting to them in a way that relates to their own life. Or they speak theoretically in a way that doesn't relate to anyone, including them. And they're teaching as a way to meet their own needs. Their concern is not really for the listeners. I think one of the many reasons why we were so attracted to Srila Prabhupada is that Prabhupada really came and taught out of compassion and connection with his listeners. Srila Prabhupada was not traveling and teaching as a way of meeting his own needs. He was traveling and teaching as a way of service. So if I'm teaching as a way to meet my needs and I really don't care about you, that's not very spiritual. In fact, it's not even practically human. But it's typical. I'll say it's typical. It's generally what happens. All right, now our third maxim is need building. Is the teacher's main method to motivate students. We could say about 75% of our job as a teacher or a preacher is to get people to want to do what we're asking them to do. You know, I just finished my second reading of a book called Switch, as to how to help people make change in their lives. And it talks about three parts of change: the rider, the elephant, and the path. The rider is the intellect, the logical, analytical part of a person. The elephant is the emotional part of a person, and the path is the environment. It says you have to create a suitable environment. You have to give the analytical part clear direction and goal. And you've got to motivate the elephant. In every study of psychology, we act only when we feel some emotion. So how are we going to motivate people? We're motivated to learn something when it meets our needs. You know, I had 5 years of French in school, never learned much of it. But when a French-speaking girl lived down the street from me, I started using my French. So when I have a need for something, I'm motivated to learn it. So when we say need building, we mean bringing out, reminding the audience of what their needs are. All right, so here's a nice picture of what it's like to teach without doing any need building or need connecting. Right? You're trying to push that donkey forward, and the donkey's trying to go for the apple on the tree. It's going in the opposite direction. And here's a nice picture of what it is to teach by building the needs of your students and showing them how what you're teaching is going to meet their needs. Okay, going on with our maxims. So people are motivated by their needs to the degree that they feel their needs. Now, this is emotion. If I bring out in you, I really need to connect with the people I'm teaching. You know, I'm tired of just being at the front of the room talking about something. And the people who are listening to me, they're thinking about what they've got to buy at the grocery store at 10 o'clock. You know, I want to feel that real connection with Krishna and that real connection with my audience. So in the same way, you want the audience to be thinking, I really need this. That's something that happens in the heart, not in the head. You should always build people's needs before you introduce something new. Now, if you're giving a Sastra class, this would mean every single class. If you're giving a series of seminars, some sort of ongoing series of classes, then anytime there's a new unit, anytime there's a new area, you want to go back to need building. No, the people should be begging. Now, we have a thing here that says hide the hook so that they aren't aware. So need building should be done elegantly. If it's done grossly, it feels manipulative. So obviously, we should be caring and compassionate and not manipulative, but we also need to act in such a way that people are not going to interpret us as being manipulative, even if they're not. We'll go into that more later. So we build at the beginning of each lesson and during the class for the next class. Beginning of each lesson and during the class for the next class. And resurface it whenever you feel people's interest is waning. I once was giving a class about Madhvacharya in Soho Street, and I had prepared a highly philosophical, intellectual type class on Madhvacharya's philosophy. Within 10 minutes, I could see that the audience interest was waning, and so I switched gears and started building the need. Okay, the need should be according to your particular audience. So in one sense, there are certain generic needs that all human beings have that you can relate to for any audience. But there's also going to be particular needs according to particular audience. This is called Desh Kala Patra, time, place, and circumstance. So one of the qualities of Krishna is that he always adjusts things for the time, place, and circumstance. And he knows how to take action based on time, place, and circumstance. Srila Prabhupada says it's required to keep the eternal principles of Shastra while adjusting for time, place, and circumstance. It's really funny. A devotee was presenting to me that his spiritual master was being criticized for presenting Krishna consciousness according to time, place, and circumstance. And he had prepared some defense, showing how well other people in the past have also innovated. And I said, no, it's not that innovation is a departure from the norm, but innovation is the norm. And if you don't innovate, you're breaking the norm. We are required, Prabhupada uses the word required. We are required to present the philosophy according to time, place, and circumstance, according to the particular audience. That's very much part of avoiding the offense of preaching to the faithless, and it's very much part of the austerities of speech, where your speech is beneficial. It actually serves your particular audience. Of course, this principle is the reason why we will find seemingly contradictory instructions from Srila Prabhupada, from all the acharyas, from Krishna. You know, the instruction that Krishna gave Nanda Maharaj when asking him to stop the Indrajanya is contrary to the instruction that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita, because he had a particular purpose with a particular audience. In fact, Krishna even gives contrary instructions to Arjuna in different parts of the Bhagavad Gita. As Arjuna is progressing, the points change. I'm thinking of with Srila Prabhupada. There's a couple letters Srila Prabhupada wrote within a very short time frame of each other to people who had stopped chanting their 16 rounds. And one of those people, he said, at least chant for 1 hour before you go to work. It wasn't clear where Prabhupada was indicating japa or kirtan, and he didn't give a number of rounds, just at least 1 hour. I don't know anyone who can chant 16 rounds in an hour. maybe an hour and 15, 20 minutes, not an hour. And to the other devotee, he said, give up all engagement, move back into the ashram, and chant at least 64 rounds a day. He said, I'm writing a separate letter to the temple president asking him to facilitate you in this. So two very different instructions for people with seemingly the same problem. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Bhakti Loka, when he's expanding on Rupa Goswami's instructions for both the hindrances and the help in Upadeshamrita, text 2 and 3. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives one set of instruction for renunciates and one set of instruction for householders. So you want to be careful that how you build your need relates to your particular audience as far as possible. Now, building people's need and relating your class to people's needs may be affected by things that you can't control. So if you're in a room that's much too hot or much too cold, or where there's no air circulation or something like that, people may not be able to focus on what you're saying. You may not be able to connect with them. That's what Prabhupada gives us as, if people are hungry, they're not going to be able to listen to spiritual philosophy. You know, Prabhupada was talking about this as far as people who are starving, but we found this even sometimes on a fast day. There's that funny story where Prabhupada on Janmashtami asked for Krishna book to be read, and he was going on until 2 in the morning listening to Krishna book. And the devotees, they were all starving, wanting to break their fast at midnight. And so they were having a hard time concentrating on the Krishna book. So this is also something that we need to take into consideration. One temple that I visit on Sunday, the morning class goes on until 10 or 11 in the morning. And what I found out later is that most of the devotees, because they know about this, they eat something before the class. But I remember the first time I gave class there, I said, don't we need to end class so devotees can eat? I said, do they have like little snacks in their pocket or something? So one should take this sort of thing into consideration. Are people hungry? Are they tired? Is the room too hot? And if possible, make some external adjustment. Don't just keep going thinking that people are going to be able to be like Maharaj Bricket, who can listen even when they're fasting from food, water, and sleep. And sometimes our ability to connect with our listeners is hindered by internal factors. You know, if someone just died in the community or somebody's very sick, then your whole community may be distracted. And this may happen on an individual level also. You know, if somebody's just had a big fight with their wife and their wife said, I'm going to divorce you, then even if they're sitting in the room, they're probably not actually sitting in the room. And your ability to connect to them is going to be hindered. Now, in such circumstances, you can, sometimes you just simply stop your presentation and say, maybe we'll just do this another day. In some cases, you may switch what you originally were going to talk about and switch to something that's more pertinent to what's actually going on. And we find that Srila Prabhupada did this sometimes. We find that Srila Prabhupada sometimes in a Shastra class would end up talking about something that was going on in the community that was really disturbing people, because he knew that that was the only thing that was occupying their mind anyway. He wasn't going to be able to go on to another topic. Okay, so this is a little activity. I'd like you to think of what percentage of teachers actually bring out what you need before they teach. And I'd like us to list our 5 felt needs. By felt needs, I mean things like, I got to pay off my debt. Got to clean my house. I wish my wife would stop nagging me. Need to get my health together. So let's start with that. If we could unmute this. Unmuted.
Okay, Prabhu's, I unmuted everybody on free conferencing. Just a reminder about free conferencing, you can mute and unmute yourself always by pressing *6. But please don't make too much background noise. Be conscientious of it.
Okay, I'd like everyone to write down 5 felt needs in their life. Things that you think, these are things I need to take care of. These are things I need to do. Now, not something so petty as I need to go to the post office today and mail a letter. But things that are kind of weighing on us. Okay, if some of you could suggest what some of your felt needs are, and then we'll look at what is the real need that's underneath the felt need. If anybody's willing to volunteer a felt need.
Would being concerned about one's financial status or stability, would that apply?
Yes. So that conference is,
you know, I need to make more money, or I need to pay off my debt, or I need to budget money better. I need to find a way to make money. Those needs could be, I need, yeah?
What about something even more personal, like I need to become more humble?
Okay. I need to become more humble in my dealings with others. Anybody else have a suggestion of felt need?
Better memory.
Okay. So we have financial, we have humility, memory. Any other felt needs?
Better health.
Health. Okay.
Sleep less.
Okay.
to always remember Krishna.
That's a real need. Okay, any other felt needs?
Need to feel appreciated.
Yeah.
I need more Mother Urmila classes.
I'm not going to write that down. Anybody else for felt needs?
Need better teachers.
I could use more time.
More time. So time management.
I need to be more patient.
Probably related to humility, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Become more inspired.
Inspired. Okay, I'm going to put those all as like personal qualities.
Need to study more.
Okay, is that time management or motivation?
I guess you could go either way.
Okay, so we have already got time management and motivation. All right, let's look at what we have here and see what's the real need that's behind it. What's the real need that's behind it? So let's look at some real needs, and I'm going to actually get out of here for a minute. And go to and I should have what I did. Okay, here's a list of some now, this is, of course, an analysis in psychology. And they're giving 6 categories of real needs. And we talked the other day about 3 categories of real needs. Right? Autonomy, purpose or meaning, and mastery. Of course, in Krishna consciousness, we understand our real needs in three main categories: eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And we could also put perhaps love and connection as a fourth category. Or we could say that love and connection is the one overriding need. So if we think about needs in these ways, let's say we think about needs in terms of eternity, knowledge, bliss, and connection, or yoga. So financial relates to what? Eternity, knowledge, bliss, or connection.
What about eternity? Because you want the same situation. Oh.
Yes. Because eternity is connected to security. I'm concerned about money because I want to be secure. Money symbolizes everything I need for my physical existence. Without money, it's hard to have shelter, it's hard to have food, it's hard to have clothes. So money is very connected to security. In fact, when you buy certain sorts of investments, they're called securities. Right? So the desire for money is very much connected to the desire for being eternal. Money is also often, though, connected to the others, because sometimes we feel that without money, I can't get knowledge. I can't pay for classes. I can't buy books. So sometimes the felt need for financial stability is actually related to the need of knowledge, and financial security can also be related to the need for enjoyment. Because if I have money, well, then I can buy silk clothes instead of, blue jeans. And I can buy macadamia nuts instead of peanuts. And I could buy a nice car instead of an old beat-up one. So money is related to all three. I'd say primarily money tends to be related to eternality or security, but it is certainly also related to the other two. Now, the way you know that the felt need of monetary security is related to those real needs is a very simple question. Let's say you had complete security. Let's say you had absolutely no fear or concern that you could be harmed in any way. And let's say that you had access to full knowledge. And let's also say you had access to unlimited, ever-expanding bliss. Would you need money? No. So if all of your physical concerns were provided for and you had full awareness that you were invulnerable and eternal, if you had access to complete knowledge, and if you had access internally to ever-expanding bliss, money would become irrelevant. I don't know why. Anyway, Hare Krishna. So that's an example of how financial connects to real needs. And health is obviously connected to eternality and also to some extent to pleasure. Things like reducing sleep, motivation, time management is generally related to a sense of purpose, to having a sense of meaning in our life. Now, although having a sense of meaning is a universal need, my own experience is that devotees have a much higher need for meaning and purpose than does the average person. Meaning and purpose is very much related to our absolute need for connection with Krishna, which is what gives everything meaning. We talked about personal qualities, humility, patience. I'd say inspiration and motivation relate again to purpose. So these personal qualities again relate to connection, to loving relationships. The reason we want humility and the reason we want patience generally is to have some connection. Same with appreciation. We're looking for that yoga with Krishna. And remembering Krishna obviously is related to connection. Also, anything that relates to a sense of mastery that connects with our need for knowledge. Now, if you see this sort of thing, you can understand how you can teach Krishna consciousness in such a way that it will address the felt needs of your audience. So I can teach Krishna consciousness in a way that does two things. Let's say my audience is concerned about money. That's a pretty good assumption. Most people have some concern about money. It's rare to find a person who has no concerns about money. I've met such people, but that's unusual. So we can show how, through Krishna consciousness, we can learn better how to manage our money in an external sense. You know, giving a certain amount of donations, spending money on Krishna service, earning money through honest means, developing a quality so that we're satisfied with what we get through honest endeavor. So we can deal with that felt need in very practical ways. We've got a lot of practical money management advice given in the Shastra and by the Acharyas. And we can also deal with the underlying real need for security and perhaps also for pleasure and knowledge by showing that if I have ultimate security in Krishna, then my concerns about money, my anxieties about money will dissipate. I still have some responsibility to manage it properly, but it's no longer going to be an anxiety. And that meets the ultimate need. All right, I'd like to ask you question 3. What do you think of the felt needs in the community of people that you teach?
Can you please repeat the question?
So what do you think that people in your community have as their felt needs? What do you think that people are going through their day concerned about?
Wanting to feel accepted.
Okay.
And connected, and that someone cares.
Okay.
They want to feel detached from the compelling desire, the nagging desire for sense gratification.
All right.
I think most people want to feel appreciated and needed.
Okay.
Yeah. Appreciated, yeah.
They want to feel a part of a family.
People want to be loved.
Want to be loved? Okay. Well, what do you think, though, that people are walking around thinking about?
Their sense gratification.
So people in the community that you teach and that you preach to and that you might be giving a class to, what do you think they're walking around thinking about? I really need this, I really need that, I really need this.
Whom can I reveal to myself?
I'm sorry?
Whom can I reveal?
Who can I trust?
An associate.
Right.
I need to find someone I can trust. Okay, good. Others?
Yeah, that's right. I agree with that.
Is there someone like me?
Okay, I think we're really looking at, you know, in our day, some of the things we mentioned. How can I become detached from my bad habits and from sense gratification? How can I manage my time properly? How can I make sure that I have enough money to get what I need? How do I get along better with the people in my life? How can I have a better relationship with my wife, with my husband, with my kids, with my temple authorities, with my boss, with my coworkers, with my clients or patients, or, you know, with the government? How can I keep all of my machines and my home in good working order? These are mostly the kinds of anxieties and needs that people are absorbed in during the day. Now, you can understand that if that's what I'm absorbed in, yeah?
basically a little Krishna who can maintain the whole whatever universe or whatever area he is operating in. He can take care of everything.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Now you can understand that if what we're teaching doesn't relate to the stuff that people are thinking about, they're not going to be very interested to hear us. You know, if I'm going through my day thinking about, okay, how am I going to get done today what I want to get done? How am I going to keep my resolutions? How am I going to do the reading that I want to do? How am I going to avoid the bad habits that I have and the attachments that I have? How am I going to react with patience and kindness the next time somebody in my family says something that aggravates me? How am I going to get along better with people in my family? That's what I'm thinking about. And then, you know, you're coming and giving a class on the universal form of Krishna or the 5 gross elements of the material world, or even, you know, higher stages of meditation, Rupa Goswami's categories of the 5 most important items of devotional service. And if you don't relate that to what I have in my mind all the time, I'm not really going to hear you. Right? I'm going to be, my inner absorption is going to be, yeah, but my wife's driving me crazy. And anyway, I can't go live in Mathura, so what is this about? Right? Okay, let's go on. So now what do? Now we're going to go through our method. Our method has 5 steps. What are we going to do to make our teaching connect to people's felt needs, bring them to their real needs, and then show how to meet their real needs and, if possible, their felt needs? Okay, first of all, we've got to find out what people need. Now, I'll say frankly that often we think we know what people need, but we really don't know at all. You know, some of you mentioned, you can mute again now if you want. Some of you mentioned that you want to have someone you can talk to, you can confide in. So what does that indicate? That indicates that many of us have in our lives nobody who knows our real needs. I mean, how many people do each of us have in our lives who actually knows what our deep concerns are? I don't have very many people like that. Maybe 1 or 2. I have maybe 1 or 2 people in my life that I'm willing to be completely open and honest with and say, this is what my real question is, and this is what I'm really struggling with. Right? We don't generally trust enough people to open up to them. So we're going in our lives, you know, interrelating with people, and we may think that we know what's really on their mind. And we may think we know what's really absorbing them. And we may try to connect our teaching to what we think is absorbing them, and we may miss the mark entirely. So a direct method is asking questions. Now, I usually do this in an anonymous way. So many times when I do home programs in places where I really don't know people, you know, I'm visiting another city, I'll do things like pass around paper and pencils and say, all right, please write down 2 or 3 of your biggest doubts or questions or challenges in spiritual life. Now, of course, it's funny because sometimes people write down what they think they're supposed to say. But I've had people, you know, if you do it anonymously, I've had people write down things that were surprising. You know, I've been sometimes surprised at how many people struggle, say, with different forms of intoxication, or how many people struggle with pornography, or how many people struggle with different sexual matters. And that's true, by the way, whether you're in India or whether you're in Paris. You know, sometimes we think, oh, I'm preaching to an Indian audience, they don't have any sexual issues. You know, they're just a little bit more reticent to discuss them. So I found this to be a good method when you're teaching people face-to-face, that periodically you do a little anonymous survey where people can fill out a little card, get like a little index card, and have people write down what area do I in Krishna consciousness do I have the greatest doubt about? I mean, I had a recent email conversation with a devotee, initiated devotee, who told me, I'm really not sure that Krishna is God. Now, how many people is she going to reveal this doubt to? I'm really not sure if Krishna is God. Maybe God is something else or something else. Even though she's been following Krishna consciousness for 2 years and she's got initiated. So what is your biggest doubt in Krishna consciousness? This is not something that we walk around talking about, or that we even necessarily talk about to our close friends. Certainly not things that we ask in an open class, generally speaking. If we do, we ask it in kind of a covered way, or an indirect way. What's my biggest challenge in Krishna consciousness? And the third thing I often ask people is, what's one thing you really wish you could fix in your life? So what's your biggest doubt? What's your biggest challenge in terms of doing things and following? And what's something you'd like to fix in your life? So this has given me high quality information that I really can't get any other way. And it gives me often an insight into the needs of my particular audience that I wouldn't be able to guess at. Okay, so we can have pretty open-ended questions like the one I suggested. You can also interview individual people. You know, especially this is an ongoing class. You can ask these kind of questions of people in your community. Talked about an anonymous questionnaire. These are other kinds of questions you can ask. The biggest problem in my life is. The Krishna conscious practice I have the most problem with is. I often struggle with what? When I get depressed, the reason is. My greatest worry in life is. So these sort of ways are ways of finding out what people's needs are. Okay, personally visiting people's homes, getting to know them. I know one leading preacher who, when he visits communities, doesn't stay in temples anymore and gives very few classes in temples. Rather, what he does is go to people's homes. And he'll do sometimes 5 or 6 home visits a day, where he has a little program at the home, and he gets to know people. Okay, that's direct methods. Indirect methods. See what books people are reading. What are the popular books among your audience? What magazines and newspapers are they reading? One example is a church whose attendance was going down, and they put up a sign. You know how churches put up a sign as to what the next lecture is going to be about. They put up a sign that next Sunday we're going to speak about what to do if you think you married the wrong person. And instead of their usual attendance of 30, they had 2,000 people. So research studies and polls. Of course, this isn't so relevant if you're just teaching to devotees, because we don't have practically any research that focuses just on devotees. But you could look at research and polls about the demographics of your group. What are people in their 20s or 30s, or men or women, or educated people, or professional people? What kind of things are concerning them? And if you're going to be teaching the public, then you can talk to individuals that deal a lot with the public. Barbers, counselors. What are people's actual concerns? Okay, just as an example of some research that was done among devotees by Brooke Radford, what are the pressing needs that he found? The report has shown conclusively that authority or lack thereof of ISKCON gurus and the GBC represents the most significant predictors of member commitment to ISKCON. Quite simply, it is clear that many ISKCON members, temple devotees, congregation members, and former members alike place minimal trust in ISKCON's leadership. So this is a very high felt need among devotees, which interestingly enough, none of us brought up in our recent discussion. It does come up indirectly in questions in class. In fact, just recently in the classes we had here over Skype, these were the sort of things that were being discussed. Well, what do you do if your guru isn't up to the standard? Now, this is the sort of question I find generally people are not going to bring up publicly in a class, because they're scared. You know, if I bring up the question, if I bring up the fact that I don't have so much trust in leadership, then I may be asked to leave. But this is a high felt need, according to research, of course this was done in '96, of most devotees. Okay, here's an interesting contrast in American schools, contrasting 1940 and 1980. What were the top problems that the teachers reported having with students? So needs change over time. This is a very important fact to realize. And I see this problem among devotees a lot, that we may think that the needs that people have now in my audience are exactly the same needs that people had 20 years ago. When it comes to real needs, those are universal and eternal. When it comes to felt needs, those are changing. And I've seen a lot of policies in ISKCON that are written as if people still had the same felt needs they had in 1974. Then you just don't connect. Okay, this is again from the 80s. I mean, these are the sort of facts that it's useful to know about your audience. Just like I find frequently that people preaching to Indians assume that Indians have certain standards of lifestyle and morality that may not be in accord with what's actually going on. I mean, a few years ago I read in a Jet magazine how 1/3 of Indian youth living in the cities in India are openly engaged in illicit sexual behavior. That's not the kind of thing we assume about Indian youth in India. All right, so once that we've done our research directly and indirectly, then we have a need inventory for our audience. We developed a list of what those people's felt needs are. Okay, now we've got that list, and it's a real list. It's not just based on my needs or what I think people's needs are, but by really going out in the field and doing some research, which I want to do at least once in a year. Now, for every class, I focus on one need. Now, those of you who are in our other class, remember how we talked about focusing on one principle. How do you decide what principle you're going to focus on? Remember we talked about how in every passage of Scripture, there's at least 20 principles. I'd go so far as to say there's probably at least 200 in every scriptural passage. How are you going to pick what principle you're going to focus on? Here's the secret. Oh my, somebody is Skyping me. Okay. So, the glories of computers. So you pick your principle according to a one need of your audience that you're going to focus on. You've gotten to know what the needs of your audience are. You're going to pick one of those needs, and you're going to pick a principle that relates to that need, a principle that's going to meet that need. Okay, step 3, you're going to prepare for class. This is what we're going to do right now, is we're looking at that. Remember that original thing of stirring curiosity? What is this? Tell me more. This relates to the what is this? Tell me more. I think about, okay, let's see, what would happen if people don't meet their needs? So let's say they have a need. We all have a need for trust. And my felt need is that I don't feel that I can trust my leaders. I don't feel I can trust people in my community. I don't have anyone I can reveal my mind to. That's my felt need. Right? So what happens if I don't meet this need? Well, I'm going to feel very lonely. I'm going to feel very isolated. I'm going to have problems that are just kind of eating at me over and over again that I don't know how to deal with, and I can't ask anyone's help for them. I'm going to be very guarded in my dealings with others because I don't feel I can really trust them. I'm going to be examining everything I say and everything I do, thinking about how the other people in my life are going to interpret them, and so forth. Then I can meditate on, okay, what would happen if this need was met? Well, if this need was met, then I can have relationships with others in my community that were authentic. I'd feel free to mourn the things that I do wrong. I could just be sad about my failings and what I do wrong without any fear of judgment or blame. And I can celebrate what I do right without any fear that people would accuse me of being arrogant and being self-centered. So I could be free to have genuine mourning and genuine celebration. I could feel really connected with others, that other people liked me regardless of my failings and regardless of my talents, that they didn't envy my talents and they didn't hammer my failings into me. I get the kind of guidance that I really need according to my particular circumstance. You know, people would give me advice and instruction that was actually related to what I needed, instead of giving me advice and instruction that I go, oh man, I already tried that, or that doesn't have anything to do with me, or that's too high, or that's too low. And I get a lot of confidence that I'd actually be advancing in Krishna consciousness. All right, so this is how you're preparing for the class. That really meditating on this one need that you picked, and really meditating on what are the consequences of having that need be unmet, and what are the consequences of having that need be met. This is in your preparation. Okay, then step 4 and 5 is in the class itself. You want people to feel that need. You want to bring it up to the surface. Because we're walking around in our lives. See, we have this need for trust. We have this need that other people are going to trust me and I can trust them. Right? And that comes from the ultimate need of yoga with Krishna, of course. But I have this felt need in my life, but I'm not consciously aware of it. Why am I not consciously aware of it? Because I don't know how to meet it, and if I don't know how to meet it, it's better that I don't think about it. So generally, I'm not thinking about it. I'm thinking about something else. How much gas do I have in the car? How much money do I have in my wallet? What's on my to-do list for the day? I wish my husband would stop yelling at me. So my job is that I want to bring to the surface this feeling in the devotees or in my audience. So I'm thinking about, as an example, that when I gave class in Mayapur, I'm going to give this as an example because you can go and read the transcript on Dandavat. So when I gave class in Mayapur in February, so the verse and the purport were about the education of children in Krishna consciousness, and Prabhupada said that if we were to do that, the face of the world would automatically change. So I meditated on how people had needs, my audience had needs that were related to the face of the world changing. I thought, well, what is that need? I thought, well, the needs are, when I'm out somewhere, if I'm a strict devotee, I can't eat anything. I've got to do all my own cooking. I mean, wouldn't it be cool if there were tons of prasadam restaurants everywhere? I mean, wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't it be cool if the tax money I paid to the government was used for Sankirtan Yajna? If the government were actually supporting Krishna conscious endeavors. And I went on and built a picture of society. What would society be like if the world were full of Krishna conscious people? In other words, I was building a picture of what would happen if that need was met. And I also talked a little bit about what it's like if it's not met. You always want to have both negatives and positives because some people are more motivated by avoiding a negative, and some people are more motivated by attaining a positive. So you never want a presentation that only presents what would it be like if the need was met, and you never want a presentation that only presents what it would be like if a need was not met. You want to have a little of each. So you can present, with the present world, it's really hard to relate my occupation to Krishna consciousness. It's almost like I have to have my Krishna consciousness in one place and my occupation in another place. That's what the people at the Bhaktivedanta Hospital did. They decided, hey, we're doctors. Let's find a way to relate our profession to Krishna consciousness. And if we had a world where everybody was devotees, then whatever occupation you did, it would be related with Krishna. Right now we may feel that frustration that in order to earn a living, I've got to do so many mundane things. Right? So you see how I'm doing both. Then fulfill the need is what you do in your personalize and your persuade. It's where you show people how the truths of what you're teaching. Give them the means of meeting that need. And then in the persuade, you give them an action they can take that will help them to meet that need. Okay, we're going to contrast teaching to people's needs without teaching to people's needs. Right? And this is sort of a review. So at least once a year, you want to identify people's needs. And regularly, you want to isolate certain needs that you're looking at. Before giving a class, you want to imagine what it would be like for people to have that need met or not. So these two things, identify, find need, isolate, focus need, imagine, forecast need, those are two ways of saying the same thing. In class, you want to inspire people so they actually feel that need. So what are you going to be doing in the class? Seizing attention, stirring curiosity, stimulating the felt need, surfacing the real need, and then either in class and after, giving people instructions as to how they can fulfill that need so people can see that they got what they wanted. So I want to not only present the principle that we need to have confidential friends to whom we can reveal our mind in confidence and whom we can trust, but I want to, that's right. But I want the audience to feel that for themselves. I have to have at least one or two people in my life that are like that. Now, what am I going to do to get it? What are the steps I'm going to take? Okay, so what the teacher does is identify, isolate, imagine, inspire, and instruct. And what the student feels is, what is this? I want this. I need this. I got what I wanted. All right, how do we do this? How do we surface the need? Now, we talked a lot in our last seminar about how to do this, stating our principle in a very concise way, using things that are unexpected, that are emotional, that are stories. So now we're going to look at another list here. We've got 7 ways that we can surface people's felt needs. We can use graphs of lists. Right, like I just gave you before, some graphs of lists of what are the problems in society. 50% divorce rate. We can tell a story. Tell a story of somebody who finally found somebody that they could trust and how they were able to reveal their mind. Right? We can do a drama. Just with our voice and our body language, we can often surface people's real needs. We can use music. Now, of course, music is a very interesting one because the music of our acharyas definitely serves to surface felt needs, to connect with real needs, and show how to meet those needs. If you read the translations to the songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Narottama Das Thakur, you'll see that that's exactly what they're doing. The problem is that for most of us, those songs are in a foreign language. And for most of us, we're just going blah, 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 blah. We're just saying, blah, blah, blah. We're just saying, making sounds. Like I know children born in the Hare Krishna movement who ask their parents, why do we worship groceries every day? From Vande Groceries. Vande Groceries. Why are we saying Vande Groceries? So I know some people who've tried to combat this by sometimes, meditating on the translations of the songs, or even having an English version of the song. This fact struck me very poignantly once when I was at Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house in Swarup Ganj, seeing these Bengali ladies singing Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs, and I thought, for them, it'd be like me singing a song in English. So music is a very, very powerful way if you know what you're singing. Diagrams, simple diagrams, or a picture can often bring out the mood. All right. A factual presentation, stories, drama, through the way we deliver, through music, through a diagram, through pictures. What do you have here? Desires. What are we getting here? We're trying to increase people's desires to hear from us. So people have a motivation, that they care about what's in the Shastra. All right. Unmute it, please. We're going to give an example here from the Shastra of how Narada Muni followed the principles. So this is Narada and Magrari. So first Narada said to the hunter, I was wondering whether all the boars and other animals that are half killed belong to you. The hunter replied, yes, what you're saying is so. Now Narada was seizing attention. He said, why did you not kill the animals completely? Why did you half kill them by piercing their bodies with arrows? So that aroused Magrari's curiosity. He was thinking, oh, what's this? He said, I have one thing to beg of you. Hunter said, you may take whatever animals or anything else you would like. I have many skins if you'd like them. I should give you either a deer skin or a tiger skin. So the hunter's thinking, what is this? What is Narada doing? Now Narada is going to the next step of stirring curiosity. He says, I don't want any of these skins. I'm only asking one thing, that you kill the animals completely. And the animal says, what's wrong with them lying there half killed? So now he's thinking, tell me more. Right? We stir the curiosity. Now Narada is going to simulate the felt need. He says, if you leave the animals half dead, you're giving them pain, you're going to have to suffer. He says, all the animals that you've killed will kill you one after another in the next life. Now he became scared. And he said, now I'm wondering how I can become free from my sins. Now keep in mind that becoming free from sins is not the ultimate purpose in preaching of Krishna consciousness. Narada brought out a felt need. Not a deep need, a felt need. That I don't want to suffer. So the hunter's thinking, I really want this. I don't want to suffer. Okay, now he's surfacing the real need. Narada Muni says, if I'm going to give you some instructions. And Narada tells him to break his bow. You see how the stirring curiosity keeps on going, the mystery keeps on going? Break my bow? Why? Why would I break my bow? Now the hunter's becoming more desperate. Hey, how am I going to maintain myself? Now Narada is satisfying the real need. He says, I'm going to send you food. These are my instructions. This is what you do. Give away your possessions. Go live with your wife in a cottage by the Ganga. Worship Tulsi Devi. Now the hunter thinks, okay, I've got what I want. All right, we're going to practice this together. We're going to look at the felt need of time management. Okay, so how are we going to develop our bait? Remember our nectar for catching our butterflies? So I'd like each of you to write down just very briefly that if somebody was organized, they had good time management, what are 10 things they would think, feel, or do? And then 10 things they think, feel, or do if they're not organized. So take a minute to do this, please. okay? Some people would like to share.
There's no way I could put down all 10 in that kind of time, but I can read off a couple.
Okay.
Okay, I got like 3. So first of all, you prioritize the most important things.
Yeah.
Then only do those things are the most important, and then be satisfied with doing maybe even only 1 or 2 of those things. And then the negative side, just react to things that are emergencies, do only those things that are enjoyable in the moment, or put off things that are difficult. That's as far as I got.
Okay, that's very nice. Anybody else?
Be on time.
Okay, be on time %. Which would then, how would I feel if I'm on time?
You feel like you're going to, especially at a class, you're going to get everything you want to get from it.
Okay, all right. I'm feeling that I'm honoring my relationship with the other person if it's something that's face-to-face.
I said prioritize also. That was number 1 on my list, prioritize.
Okay, anybody else?
Get up early.
Get up early. And how would you feel?
You get a jump on the day. The day completely plays out differently depending on when you get up.
Yeah, okay.
Feel accomplished.
Yes, you feel very accomplished. Feel a sense of mastery, right? Remember we talked about we can understand 3 needs and ultimate needs in that sense, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Okay, so you can see how you could explain this. If this was the need you were focusing on, you could say, just imagine if you could get up when you wanted, early enough to get a jump on the day. If at the end of the day you said, wow, I really did what was most important and was most satisfying. I really got fully what I wanted to get out of what I was doing because I started it at the right time. I had good relationships with other people because I started on time. Or, do I have a day where, wow, all right, all I took care of was the crises that were not really important. I didn't get anything done today that I really wanted to get done. I got such a late start on the day. Every time somebody interrupted me, I was irritated because I didn't have my life. Okay, so that's a little explanation of the positive and the negative, how you would present it. Okay, so then we can decide, how are we going to do this? So I just explained doing it with just my own delivery and describing it. But we could also use a story. You could say, yeah, I knew this guy Krishna Das, and he was waking up at 7 every day, just dealing with one crisis after another, after another, after another. He didn't sit down to chant Hare Krishna until 4 in the afternoon when he got home from work, and then he was just tired and distracted, and the kids were crying, and his wife was asking him to fix the refrigerator that had been broken for 3 weeks. And, every night when he went to bed, he would think, I didn't give the time to spiritual life that I wanted, and I didn't get one thing done today that was really important to me. Yeah, that went on for months. And then one day Krishna Das decided that he was really going to make a change, that after all, it was his life, and he was the one who had to live his life. And he thought, I'm not just going to do in my life necessarily what other people think is important that I really don't care about. And I'm not going to just run my life about other things. I'm going to run my life the way I want to run my life. I wonder if instead of getting up at 7, what if I could get up at 5? What would I have to do to get up at 5? And he started putting a plan together that started the night before. And he decided, okay, from 5 to 7, that new time that I have, what am I going to do during that time? And he started to chant at least half his rounds during that time. And he decided that every day, before he went to work, he was going to spend a half an hour doing what was most important. All right, so that's a story. I could also do it in facts. So let's say that I could compile some facts about how much of the average day is spent just dealing with unimportant crises, or how many people really feel that they've done in the last 5 years what's most important for them, or how many people struggle with time management issues. So I could get facts bringing out the problem, or I could get facts to point to a solution. I could have a diagram of what a typical person's day is like. What percentage of our time is spent on this or that or the other thing. So those are all different ways that I could bring out people's needs. and surface the need. Okay, so I just did this. I just told a story just because it's getting to be late here. But you could also have a similar story. Okay, so now after you've told this kind of story, people are thinking, yeah, I want to feel like that too. How do I do it? So they're going to be anxious now to hear, how do I do it? All right, what's the real need behind time management? What do you think the real need is?
To not waste time, and so you can prioritize and get the most important things done that you need to get done.
Okay, let's look here at some needs. Which of these needs do you think time management relates to?
What about growth?
Growth, okay.
And I'd also say meaning, purpose.
Meaning. Yes, because a lot of time management relates to the need we all have for meaning. That I want to know that what I'm doing with my time has meaning. That I'm not spending my time doing things that are insignificant. That I really want to put my time and energy into things that have significance. Any other needs?
Play and fun.
Yeah, okay. That, by the way, is a real need. Because we're part and parcel of Krishna, and that's what he does all day long. Yeah, if I don't have good time management, then I end up never doing things that I really enjoy. Any others?
Well, I would say also a challenge, because unless you're going to, set aside some stuff that are really difficult and you make the conscious endeavor to get it accomplished, most chances it won't happen.
Yeah, life becomes boring. Prabhupada talks about that ideal management is always to have some fresh challenge to meet in Krishna consciousness. Could sometimes the need be part of community? Could time management relate to how much time I spend with my family and my friends? How much people can rely on me? If I say I'm going to do things or I say I'm going to be someplace, how much am I part of a community? All right. So let's say the real need is connection. We brought out some other real needs. You can choose. Remember we talked about how money was connected to different real needs. How money is connected to a need for security, money is connected to our need for pleasure, money is connected to our need for knowledge. So you choose as a presenter what real need you're going to connect that felt need to. It shows you how using the same felt need of time management, you could give, 300 different classes. Because you could be connecting to 300 different real needs. Okay, now how am I going to go from this story about this guy who gets his life together to bringing out the real need? First of all, if I'm really connected with Guru and Krishna, I'm naturally going to prioritize my time properly. And if I prioritize my time properly, that's going to help me connect with Guru and Krishna. Okay, now we're going to do a little sample together. Okay, let's say we take this verse. There are 3 gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. So here we're going to have the felt need of a peaceful life of enjoyment. I have a life free from stresses that I'm actually enjoying. And what is my bait going to be? Again, that nectar for the butterfly that's going to surface that real need. Well, I could give you facts about the stress of modern life. I mean, it's really interesting that we have all these devices to save time, and they've actually taken away our time. I mean, I sometimes think about before email, I used to spend 2, at most 3 hours a week answering correspondence. I had a time every Saturday when I would collect my mail from the week, and I would answer it. And now, it's common for me to spend at least an hour a day dealing with correspondence. And many times I find that to be stressful because a lot of the correspondence that I get, it doesn't particularly interest me, but I feel that I have some duty to respond to. Okay. Now I'm also putting things here from some other seminars that I haven't taught you. So the principle that we look at is what, I'm not going to look at minimum information in my need. That's from another seminar. The principle is that what takes away our peaceful enjoyment is our lust, anger, and greed. That's the principle I'm going to look at. So what takes away my peaceful enjoyment is not really my computer, and it's not the bills I have to pay and the job I have to go to. It's my lust, anger, and greed. That's my principle. Personalize it in such a way that I'm going to surface the real need. So I think of a time when I was happily enlivened in spiritual life, when I was subduing the lust, anger, and greed, the LAG, what lags our spiritual life. Now, how am I going to fulfill the real need? My real need here is not just for a peaceful, enjoyable life. My real need is to connect with Krishna. So by loving Krishna, I conquer lust. By agreeing to accept whatever Krishna arranges as his mercy, I conquer anger and frustration. Through grabbing chances for service, I conquer greed. This is just a sample. There's another 100 ways you could do this. Okay, then in my persuade, I ask you, take one aspect of lust, anger, and greed. How will I transform it in some specific way? That's my persuade. Okay, so again, you make a list of what of your audience's top 10 needs. You do that through some research. Pick a number 1 need. Rate 5 greatest spiritual needs in the temple. Okay. Take you back to our India picture. I don't know what time. Actually, my background's always changing on my computer, so I'm not sure what that is. Oh, there we have. So it's already 9 o'clock. I don't think we have time for much discussion. And I could take maybe 1 or 2 quick questions.
Mother Urmila, boy, I love these classes. You were just sort of almost saying in jest. You mentioned, how to relate the topic to the needs of your audience, and then you sort of said, something like Krishna's universal form. How would you relate something like that? It's a class. It's describing Krishna's universal form.
All right, let's actually do that. Let's do this. Yeah, let's go to, this is cool that you can all see my screen. Let's go to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11. Let's pretend that we have a verse from there. Oh, Vishnu, I see you devouring all people from all sides with your flaming mouths, covering all the universe with your effulgence. You are manifest with terrible scorching rays. All right, what are the principles here? Principles, people, please. Principles.
Krishna's destroyer of everything.
Krishna's the destroyer of everything. Okay, what else?
Everything within this world is temporary.
Everything's temporary. Good. More?
There is nothing but suffering in this world. Will be devoured.
Okay. Yeah, devoured. Because everything in this world gets devoured.
The source of all. Sorry, go ahead, Prabhu.
Krishna is everywhere.
Krishna is everywhere.
A devotee can see the true form of this material world through Krishna's grace.
Whoa, very nice. I like that. Okay, that suffering often feels like it's scorching. That when things are being taken away from us by the time factor, it often feels like something terrible, scorching, that we're being devoured. We often have this feeling. Okay, let's take the principle that the devotee sees Krishna behind destruction. The devotee sees that behind the terrible, scorching, devouring destruction, there's the form of the Lord. We take that as the principle. All right, what kind of felt needs do people have that are related to that principle?
We don't like that things are temporary.
Yeah. I have a felt need to preserve things, to keep things.
A need for eternality.
Yeah, well, that's my real need. Let's look at our felt need. My real need is for eternality. My felt needs are to keep my house and car working nicely, to keep my clothes from getting damaged, to maintain my relationship, to maintain my job, my position, my reputation. Those are my felt needs. So here, because this verse said, I see you devouring all people, let's go to relationships. So I have a felt need for my relationships to be stable, happy, and forever. That's my felt need. Every day in my life, I feel that I would like the relationships that I have to be pleasant and to last. I don't want my pleasant relationships to be broken. I don't want to feel scorched and devoured in my relationships. Would you agree that that's a pretty universal felt need?
Definitely.
Yes. Okay. I mean, we're really devastated by the death of a loved person. We're devastated by divorce, or even by arguing. Anything that feels like it's going to damage our relationships. We put a lot of time and energy and a lot of worry into trying to preserve and grow our relationships. So that's a felt need. Okay, now how am I going to, and of course the real need is for eternal connections. That's my real need. And my principle here is that Krishna is the form behind devastation. Okay, I'm going to give a really mini class here, putting all this together. So, one of the most painful things for us is when relationships are broken, or when we're afraid they're going to be broken. At that time you think everything's going well, and somebody really important in your life says something that really hurts. And deep down there's this fear. Is my relationship with this person going to be broken? Or are they going to leave me? Or am I going to feel that I should leave them? I mean, we all know of somebody in our life right now who's going through some break in a relationship. Somebody who felt they had to leave a community, or leave a marriage, or someone who left the marriage on them, or a child who won't speak to them, or some friend where there was some painful break. Maybe we've been through something like that ourselves, but not too distant past. Maybe we had somebody that we trusted, that we had a friendship with, and they said, well, now I know all about you. Now I'm not going to have anything to do with you anymore. And it feels really scorching. It feels like the heart is kind of scorched. And we wish we could be in a situation where there was this deep trust between people and real love. and that we didn't have to be in anxiety. Every time the person we love gets in a car, we don't have to worry that they're going to die in an accident. We don't have to worry that their loved person is going to be broken or that they're going to reveal some confidence of ours and break our trust. I mean, I just went through that recently with somebody where they revealed something. I had said, look, this is personal just to you, and they ended up publishing it on the web. And those things are really painful. I mean, and really, if we look at this verse, we see that all people are going to go through this pain. Terrible, scorching rays of fire smash between the teeth of the universal form. All people, all relationships. The analogy is given in the Sastra of rivers that have little bits of straw in them. Sometimes the straw comes together, and sometimes it separates again. This is the reality of our lives. Right? We can just look at the statistics. How many divorces, how many countries break off from the mother country and form their own country, how many children fight against their parents, siblings fighting against each other. How many people are dying every day, even in nice relationships? Everything is going to be destroyed. And, you know, we're fighting so hard in our own life to try to prevent that inevitable destruction. Like people boarding up the glass windows to try to stop the hurricane. Well, recently there was this Hurricane Irene, and before the hurricane came, you saw the people making all these preparations, buying stuff, boarding up their windows. And after the hurricane hit, if you went to the news site, you saw videos where people watched their house floating down a flooded river. So we all know on a deep level that no matter what we do to try to preserve and maintain our relationships, we're going to be defeated. So for the materialistic person, this is very depressing. But the devotee sees that who is it that's destroying all these? Oh, Vishnu. Right? Beginning of this verse. Oh, Vishnu. As Arjuna says, right? Vishnu. That really the destroyer is Vishnu. And who is Vishnu? He is our most lovable Lord. He is our eternal friend. He is he who comes from the world where all of our relationships are eternal and pleasing, where there's never any break on any level, psychological, emotional, or external. Prabhupada says if you want the best husband, the best friend, the best mother, the best father, then make Krishna your beloved object. Janaka, Janani, Daita, Tanai, Prabhu Guru, Patipuli, Sarvamai. That relationship is never broken. And then one sees the so-called breakings of relationships in this world as the love of the Lord. Actually his kindness, actually his love, his concern, that he reveals to us the falsity so that we can go for the real. Like the teacher who makes you take your gum out of your mouth so you can eat lunch. Never going to get any nourishment from the gum. We may become angry when someone tells us to take the gum out of our mouth. But then if they give us a real cherry pie, how much more satisfying is that? How can one eat the real cherry pie unless one takes the gum out of one's mouth? So in our lives, we're going to feel this terrible scorching rays over and over again. Everything we have will be devoured in the flaming mouth of the universal form of time. If we think that this world is ours, that we are a product of this world, we will feel it as terrible and scorching and as devouring, and we will suffer. But if instead, every time these things happen, and they will happen over and over again, if every time these things happen, we say, oh, here is my best friend. Here is my beloved Lord, wanting to give me some cherry pie and asking me to take the gum out of my mouth. Then instead of feeling it as terrible and scorching, You will feel it as soothing as millions of names. Okay?
That was amazing. It's really good you did that at the end because it puts it all together. Otherwise, it was kind of, at least for me, it was like ephemeral, like it's too much information. But when you put it all together like that, wow, that was great.
Okay, try doing it yourself. I have a home fun assignment for you. And that is, and my suggestion is that you do it now because do it while it's fresh in your mind. So we're going to end now, but to take a half an hour right now, take a verse at random, just like we took this verse at random. And you can even try to take a verse where your first impression is, how in the world am I going to relate this to anything? Look at the verse, find some principles. Think how it relates to people's needs. Think how you could surface that need through some stories, through some descriptions, remember, of both positive and negative. How you convince people of the truth of the principle in a general way. How you're going to personalize the truth of that principle, keeping in mind their felt needs. How you're going to bring them from their felt needs to their real needs. How you're going to show them how they can meet their real needs in a way that will also meet their felt needs. So thank you very much. We have this most wonderful, wonderful, wonderful philosophy that shows us how we can solve all the problems of life. We simply have to make ourselves an instrument so that we can see what the connection is. What is the connection between our philosophy and solving all of our problems in life? Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.